All right, welcome into Gun Talk Nation. This Gun Talk Nation is brought to you by... Who is it brought to you by? It's brought to you by ATN Optics, the future of optics, and also Walther Arms. Just introduced a new pistol. Check it out. All right, today on Gun Talk Nation, we're going to continue a little bit of talk about what's going on with our brothers up north in Canada. Today on the show, we have Terry Korth from the Korth Group, and you guys may be surprised at how different, but also how similar things can be as far as what people are shooting. And you may also be surprised to find out that some of the Canadian gun laws are less restrictive than what we have here. So we're going to dive into all that stuff. Terry, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it.
So Terry and I go way back to a dove field in Argentina many moons ago. Terry, how did you get into this business? And I mean, you've been around it and seen it all, I think.
Yes, I've been around it for probably 40 years, a little over 40 years. And Brian, I got into it. My father was a general manager of a large sporting goods distribution company in Canada, and he had some health issues, so he kind of retired. And at that time became a factory agent representing some high-quality U.S. manufacturers. At that time, I was working as a professional firefighter, and the way my shift worked is I had lots of time off, and of course I enjoyed the outdoors and firearms, and so I would help my dad out on my days off. And eventually went from just helping him to traveling and selling in a specific territory. And then as Dad moved on and retired, I kept the business going. And probably in about 1995, we saw a need for some enhanced distribution in Canada. So we stepped into that role, and we've been distributing product up here in Canada ever since.
So you guys bring in such a wide variety of products for Canadian shooters and hunters and that type of thing. How do you see the product mix? What are people buying in Canada lately that maybe it's different from what the U.S. is? Obviously, we have different gun laws, but as far as just the recreation side of shooting and hunting, there's got to be some differences in that way too.
Yeah, there are some differences, but also some very large, similarities between them. And, of course, our new gun laws that were enacted here very recently have put a damper on any kind of AR or AR variant in our market. So it has hurt that competitive shooting market. 6.5 Creedmoors, obviously, I'm sure the same in the U.S., has been highly popular. But what we found through this pandemic period is that people are traveling less, they take less holidays, and I believe they have more disposable cash. So we find higher end products are really selling well in our marketplace. We're fortunate enough to be partnered with Proof Barrels up here in Canada, and a lot of people are rebarreling firearms with very high quality barrels, higher end optics, just all kinds of products like that. So it's kind of the price mix has moved higher.
Interesting.
That being said, also just the volume, and whether it's people wanting to make sure they're able to take care of their families in the event that, this carries on and gets worse and things get harder to find, that could be a part of it too.
So you guys are seeing the growth of 6.5. You mentioned 6.5. And one of the things we're seeing a lot of is the popularity of precision rifle, long range shooting. Is that the same? Are you guys seeing a lot of that activity up there?
Yeah, it's really started to grow. We, of course, get restricted somewhat over different parts of the U.S. Just because of our weather, and a lot of the areas up here get weathered in, and it's a little uncomfortable and unfriendly to be outside shooting and, at some of the temperatures we get and the snowfalls, etc. But it has been a sport that's really been on the grow. We have a lot more Canadian international competitors now that are enjoying being able to travel across the border and represent Canada in some of the international matches. So definitely on a growth cycle.
Now, one thing over the years that's always been, I guess, really kind of funny to me is Gun Talk Radio has been on the air for 26 years. And it seems like every few weeks we get a caller that calls in that wants to ask about the best bear gun. And I mean, he could be in Florida. He could be in Miami, Florida, but everybody wants to talk about, I want to get a bear gun, where you guys actually have bears in Canada. I mean, that's actually something that maybe needed more than in, Fort Lauderdale. What are your opinions about bear guns? Because for some reason, it's one of these topics that people always want to talk about, and everyone's interested in owning one.
Yeah, well, they're pretty cool, and as gun owners, we like cool things. But really, the vast majority of our country definitely has black bear. A lot of the areas have grizzly, etc. So a lot of people will want a bear gun to take with them if they're just out with their family on a hike, if they're working in wilderness camps, or if they're outfitters themselves. They want to carry a bear gun with them. And of course, our handgun laws make it very difficult for anybody to carry a revolver or a pistol with them. So they go to bear guns, which typically are a little shorter barrel length, a little heavier caliber, more stopping power at short range, and they usually top those off with a good quality, low-powered optic. In a lot of cases, it may be a bear hunter who's got an opportunity at a bear and now has to track him through the bush and make sure that he's been dispatched. And of course, in that tight bush, and you're not sure what you're coming up to, you don't want a real long-barreled rifle with you. So the shorter ones are very popular.
Something quick and handy.
Yeah. Mine, I call it Hector the Protector, and I actually, for that kind of situation, use a short Defender shotgun, which are also popular with a lot of people.
What do you load with that? What do you put in it?
Usually put in, slugs.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people will alternate some SSG with slugs or something along that line. But most things are going to be close in, so you're looking at stopping power.
Right. Slugs would work great if especially you're talking about probably within 50 yards or less.
Oh yeah, I would say typically a lot less. In a lot of our heavier bush country, you're probably inside of 20 yards.
That'll wake you up, 20 yards from a bear. Now, going back to something,
gets the adrenaline going.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Hector the Protector. So going back to something you said, revolvers, because I'm thinking like carrying something for bears like a big bore revolver, but are revolvers just as restricted as a semi-auto pistol?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the laws really cover the barrel length. So in imperial terms, that's about 4 1/4 inches. So anything under that is actually prohibited. You cannot own it. If it's longer than that, you can own it, but it's a restricted firearm, which means up here it can only be used at a licensed range. So you can't take it in the field with you. And the other restriction on any kind of a handgun is magazine capacity. So revolvers generally you're not concerned with because that maximum capacity is 10. But in a pistol, obviously, high cap mags are prohibited up here.
Right. So, and what you're talking about is really most people are carrying long guns, whether it's a shotgun or a handy, quick handling rifle for out in the bush as a bear protection type of situation.
Yes, if you are a licensed trapper, for instance, you may be licensed to actually carry a revolver with you or a pistol with you. But again, those laws will vary province by province, and some provinces you can carry a pistol with you, but it's got to be a 22 long rifle. Well, that's not going to be very effective if you happen to stumble onto a bear on your trap line or whatever. So
right.
Again, it's one of those laws that sometimes I think they're put in to appease, the unknowing public more than they are to provide any kind of safety to anyone.
Yeah. Yes. Now, one thing that is interesting to me is when you look at gun regulations around the world, they really vary. And it's not necessarily the case that gun laws somewhere else are always more restrictive than the U.S., and that's true in Canada as well. I mean, so for instance, there are some places, and you think about European countries, where silencers are much less regulated than they are actually in the U.S. Canada has a few of those things. For instance, barrel length restrictions may be less restrictive in Canada.
Yeah, they very well may be, and it could be depending on specific firearms as well. That's one of the issues in my mind. There seems to be no consistency within a country or from country to country. And I would have to think that puts a tremendous burden on manufacturers. Of course, they have to be very cognizant of what they're shipping across the border into another country. And so, of course, most good quality manufacturers have compliance people whose jobs are to try and decipher some of these gun laws.
Right.
But you are correct. They do vary an awful lot.
Yeah, it's just interesting to me because I remember seeing some, short barrel shotguns, or what I would call a short barrel shotgun, but in Canada it's just a shotgun with a shorter barrel. It's not has particular special regulations on it.
Yeah, and there are different ways again that they'll determine some things. It's barrel length in relation to overall length. So you can have a longer barrel with a very short stub stock, and that'll become restricted or prohibited because the overall length isn't correct. So sometimes more factors than just the barrel length come into it.
I swear, they just invent, what are we going to choose that's dangerous and horrible today? I mean, it doesn't make any sense, at least to me.
Yeah, well, I'm on side with you on that, Ryan, and it gets frustrating. And the fact that in Canada, anyway, I'm not sure about the U.S., but although firearms are controlled federally here, they have a chief firearms officer in every province, and each of those chief firearms officers gets to interpret the laws and put their own restrictions in place. For instance, I live in Alberta, and by law, if you're a gun shop and you've got handguns, you have to have them locked up in a cabinet. But the cabinet can be glass, so a consumer can come in and look and see what he wants to look at. If you go into Ontario, no handgun can be visible to a consumer. So if they have them in a cabinet, the cabinet has to be painted or covered in a drape or something, because nobody can see them. So
wow,
it kind of makes it, again, there's what we're talking about. Trying to interpret the laws and interpret them properly. So sometimes compliance with the laws, are not all that easy. It becomes a lot of work.
No kidding. And It reminds me of how some of the tech companies will, in their internal regulations, like a YouTube or Facebook or whatever, will lump guns in with pornography and drugs. It's like as if it's the same category of thing, which is amazing to me. So Terry, let's talk about something more fun. What seems to be some of the hot items in the last year for you guys up in your market? What are some of the products that you're seeing that have really piqued your interest that the customers are really excited about? Hey, real quick, I know you're wanting to get more trigger time. You don't want to shoot your ammo. Well, guess what? Pyramyd Air, your number one resource for everything air gun. That's right. Air guns are great for training, whether that's pistols or rifles or airsoft, those types of different things, and also hunting. They've got it all. Looking for Crosman full auto BB air rifle? Yeah. Or a Chiappa charging Rhino BB revolver? Find your new air gun or airsoft at pyramydair.com. And listen up, this is important. Use the code GunTalkNation to receive $10 off any $50 purchase. I'm going to repeat that. Go to pyramydair.com, and Pyramyd is two Y's, PYAMYDAIR.com, and use GunTalkNation to receive $10 off any $50 purchase. Also, Timney Triggers, 75 years of making triggers in 2021. Timney decided to go big. They introduced the Alpha Competition series of handgun trigger, the first for the company. And the initial model is designed for the Glock Gen 3, Gen 4. We've been shooting it. It's great. Trigger is one of the most important things on any gun and certainly on a pistol. It features Timney's signature easy-to-install promise. That's important. 3-pound trigger weight and a crisp trigger break designed to keep you on target. Find out more at timneytriggers.com. What are some of the products that you're seeing that have really piqued your interest that the customers are really excited about?
Well, with us specifically, anything related to ammunition this year and over last year, if you pull the trigger and it goes bang, it is in high demand. Every caliber, everything. It's been kind of mind-boggling how much ammunition has been sold and how much is on order for this year. Other than that, as I'd mentioned earlier, sort of higher-end products, we're fortunate enough to be associated with Leupold and Stevens here in Canada, and our VX5 and 6 rifle scopes, which up here are sort of at a higher price point, are just flying off the shelves, and it's hard to keep them in inventory or keep them on their road to coming into our country. I had mentioned earlier also proof research. So full build proof rifles, that up here are selling in the $10,000-$12,000 range. We're surprised with how many of those are being ordered and asked for. The one slight disappointment we have is with some of these new firearm laws that this Order in Council, our government, put through last year, has taken some of our competitions out of the market. 3-gun, for instance, anything that has any type of an AR or AR variant as part of the competition, they are now prohibited. And when that order came in, it was, okay, as of this moment, your ARs and all the semi-automatics, etc., that were on that list, they now stay in your gun locker. You do not get to take them anywhere. You can't use them. So it was an instantaneous stop. And so we're going to see what happens and how they're, people still want to compete and have fun and shoot their firearms. So we're just going to have to see how those competitions turn around here when our weather clears up. I'm sure they will run them. They will just have to make some adaptations to them for the fact that they're not able to use any of those semi-automatic platforms anymore.
They'll be using the lever gun, 3-gun competitions, I guess.
Yeah, that very well may be one of them that they're going to go into. And I'm sure things are, I'm sure they'll adapt and we'll move on. And of course, from this industry, our hope is that we will, have a change in government soon, and that change in government may bring some common sense into these firearms regulations.
I wanted to ask you that, Terry. Do you think, in your opinion, that there's a chance to regain some of these, I guess I should call them privileges, because in Canada it's not necessarily a right. Is there a chance to regain some of this back?
Yeah, definitely there is. Our opposition parties, the main opposition party, our Conservative Party, has come out and stated that they would immediately reverse that order in council. And when we get in talking to politics, I could go on forever, but I really see this latest introduction that, the government just came out and said, we're going to do this and this. Well, it's just kind of a rehash of what they said they were going to do last year. And I really see it's posturing for an election. And unfortunately, I think it comes down to citizens of this country that don't really partake in use of firearms or understand what is involved in the use of firearms. It's very easy for somebody to say, we're going to take these horrible things away and we're going to protect you. And people go, oh, well, I want to be safer. That sounds like it makes sense. So a lot of what's in these laws are going to be challenged by individuals, by companies, by provinces, because they're trying to take some of the provincial rights away. So it's a long way away from being enacted law. And, I don't know if you remember, but many years ago, the government, again, a liberal government up here, enacted a full firearms registration. That was overturned and eventually done away with. It was just a cost nightmare. And this new one, even law enforcement officers associations are coming out and saying, this will do no good. You're forcing us to police lawful people as opposed to spending our time and energy where it needs to be with gun smuggling and illegal use of firearms. So definitely these things can be overturned, and I'm an optimist, so I believe that will happen.
That's good to hear. One thing that and you kind of alluded to it, because you have, when people are not involved in guns, they're not gun owners, they're not hobbyists or enthusiasts when it comes to shooting or hunting, they don't have a lot of knowledge about it, and they may not have a strong opinion about it. One of the things that we've seen in the past year here in the States is we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 million new gun owners that went out and purchased guns. Is that something you're seeing? I know that gun sales, ammunition sales are going crazy up there in Canada. Are you noticing a lot of new gun owners?
Absolutely. We work pretty closely with, when we can, with provincial firearms training agencies and those kind of things. And they are all reporting a real strong uptick in people coming through and taking a firearms course. And up here we have a basic firearms course, and then we have a restricted firearms course, which is primarily for handguns. And people are taking the basic and restricted together. They are actually going out and purchasing firearms. So we've got a lot more newer users. And I think part of it is this pandemic. If the world goes all to hell, I need to protect myself and my family. And if I need food, I need to go out and find it for myself. So I think that's been part of it.
Yeah, and then eventually the hope would be that they they get into it a little bit and they become hunters or they become shooting enthusiasts to some degree. Obviously, once they own some guns and they're participating in it, it's a little harder for the politicians to lie to them and tell them that these gun people or these guns are evil when they say, well, it's not them anymore, it's us.
Definitely. And, the more people that you introduce to the sport, I know here we're fortunate enough to have some underground ranges here in our facility, and I will take the opportunity to take people down there, from our banking people to our insurance brokers. So I take a lot of people down that have never seen a firearm, never held one, and never shot one. And by the end of an introductory session with them and explaining some of the laws, they're amazed that, number one, guns are fun to shoot. And number two, if there are that many safety layers put in place, how many more do you put in place, and what good do you see out of that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of our secret weapons, pun intended, on helping with gun rights and expanding that, is because once you take away that fear and that unknown, and now they go, wait a minute, I've been lied to. These aren't evil machines. These are just fun activities that people enjoy. And that is one of our, arrows in the quiver. When the more people we can introduce to shooting, to hunting, the better, because now they're kind of in the club, so to speak. I'm glad to hear you guys are doing that with people who come through and let them get a little trigger time. And sometimes it's fun, right, Terry? You get the surprise reaction from people who all of a sudden they go, wait a minute, this is fun.
Definitely. And we are avid hunters. Most of the people that work in our company are all hunters, etc. But a lot of times we will downplay, at least initially. Firearms don't need to be designed to dispatch life. There are games to play and fun to be had. And when people start to shoot and they get hooked on how fun it is, then they can make that decision if they want to add hunting into that mix. And, we found a lot of people that they're not comfortable hunting and they're not comfortable out in the woods, but boy, they love to go to the range and pull triggers and compete and just have fun family days. So we're all for that as well.
It's a great point. You don't have to push them towards the hunting. If the gateway is target shooting and that's what they're comfortable with, hey, that works too. Just get them into the sport however we can.
Yes, definitely.
Terry, thanks for being on with us. I think this is a great discussion. It kind of educates our audience a little bit more of what you guys have going on up there, and best of luck with fighting the good fight. And I hope that we can get some of those restrictions lifted on you guys so we can get back to a little bit more freedom.
Well, you're very welcome, Ryan. We will sure keep you posted as we hear things change up here, and hopefully I can see you soon, whether the border between the U.S. and Canada opens up, or who knows, maybe back in Argentina someday.
Absolutely. Yeah, we need to get together and do some shooting. Thanks, Terry.
All right.
All right, that's it for us on Gun Talk Nation. We'll see you next time.